How, in just one lifetime, the son of a school teacher born in an insignificant village went on to create India's largest companies. I'm talking about Reliance and Dhirubhai Ambani. Dhirubhai was born in 1932, and by the time of his death in 2002, Reliance Group revenues represented nearly 3.5% of India's GDP. How wild is that? It represented 7% of total market capitalization in India and 10% of Government of India's indirect tax revenues, 5% of India's total exports, and 30% of profits of the entire corporate sector in India. How wild is that? But here is the wildest stat of them all. Out of every four investors in India in 2002, one was a Reliance shareholder. How wild is that? But that's not where Dhirubhai started. I am going to tell you the entire story of Dhirubhai Ambani and founding of Reliance. Hey there, welcome to Billionaire Best Friend. I'm your host, Dr. Arpit Gupta, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. We're about to dive into something wild together. Dhirubhai Ambani's story, straight out of Ambani and Sons by Hamish MacDonald. Oh, and also at least 100 other sources. We'll cover all the juicy details from before Dhirubhai is born to Reliance's IPO in 1977 in episode 1. How does a guy go from a tiny village to building Reliance Industries, a $250 billion empire, almost 20 lakh crores today? Grab a coffee or whatever you're into and let's unpack this, just you and me. Sounds good. So, we're talking about Dhirubhai Ambani, born Dheeraj Lal Hirachand Ambani. This guy took rupees 500. That's peanuts, right? That's what the folklore says. His son once told that his father, Mukesh Ambani, once told that his father Dhirubhai started with only 500. That's the folklore. But we're going to go into all the details. But the folklore is how this guy took rupees 500 and turned it into one of India's biggest companies. His family is worth over $100 billion today, the richest in India for over a decade. His life controversial to say the least. Here are some very controversial anecdotes shared by people who observed him closely. One fellow Gujarati who observed Dhirubhai says there are three Dhirubhai Ambanis. One is unique, larger than life, a brand name. He's one of the most talked about industrialists, and for Gujarati people, he has a tremendous emotional and sentimental appeal. He's their ultimate man and inspired many emulators. The second Dhirubhai Ambani is a schemer, a first class liar who regrets nothing and has no values in life. Then there's the third Dhirubhai Ambani, who has a more sophisticated political brain, a dreamer and a visionary, almost Napoleonic. People are always getting the three personalities mixed up. Here's another anecdote shared by a lawyer who said in all seriousness, today the fact is that Ambani is bigger than the government. He can make or break prime ministers. In the United States, you can build a super corporation, but the political system is still bigger than you. In India, the system is weak. If the stock exchange dares to expose Ambani, he'll tell it, I'll pull my company shares out and make you collapse. I'm bigger than your exchange. Yes, because one out of every four shareholders is a Reliance shareholder, by the way. If the newspapers criticize, he can point out they're dependent on his advertising and he has his journalists in every one of their departments. Now, here is the most insane part. It's common understanding in India that the politicians and political parties are the most powerful people. But this lawyer, unnamed, says if the political parties take a stand against him, he has his men in every party who can pull down or embarrass the leaders. He's a threat to the system. Today, he's undefeatable. So let's rewind the clock and walk through this together. You ready to see how he pulled it off, right? Okay, so Picture this with me. It's December 28, 1932, in Chorwad, Gujarat, a sleepy little village. Dhirubhai is born into a Mod Bania family, traders by caste, but his folks dirt poor. His dad Hira Chand is a school teacher making 30 rupees a month. They're living in a two-room stone hut. No electricity, no plumbing, just stamped earth floors. Can you even wrap your hand around that? Growing up like that, most people might just give up, but not Dhirubhai. What do you think? Does poverty break you or could it actually build you? For Dhirubhai, it acted as fuel. Here I would like to highlight something very important. Dhirubhai being born into a Bania family plays an important role in him getting exposure to entrepreneurship from his birth onwards. I mean, I am a Banya too. The term itself means trader. It comes from the Sanskrit word vanij, which actually means a trader. And we've got a culture of entrepreneurship in our community. In India, most business stories follow a pattern. The patriarch starts in trade, then moves into manufacturing to build empires. Even take a non-Banya like Jamsetji Tata. For as example, he began in his father's export trading firm before founding Empress Mills here in Nagpur. I mean, my podcast is based out of Nagpur as well. Or take a Banya like Baldev Das Birla, the chief patriarch of the Birla family, who started as an opium trader. Then his son, Shri Ghansham Das Birla, moved to jute trading, then built jute mills, which eventually laid the foundation of Birla industrial family. A recent example which comes to my mind is that of Narottam Seksaria, a cotton trader who later founded Ambuja Cement. The Ambanis, Adanis, the Damanis of D-Mart or Birlas, most guys on the billionaires list or in the 1000 crore club come from this community. This community has a history of trade, banking, and money lending. Dhirubhai had that entrepreneurial exposure from the start, and his path from trader to industrialist fits the mold perfectly. Another significant thing that we need to highlight over here is that of geography. Dhirubhai is born in Kathiawar, Gujarat. Gujarat was the trading hub of ancient India, where Indian cottons and silks were sold to Arabs and later the East India Company in exchange for silver, gold, incense, and coffee from the Red Sea port. Gujaratis were key players in this pre-colonial Indian Ocean trading network, contributing cloth, indigo, opium, and spices. Among them, the people of Kathiawar are known for their exuberance, inventiveness, and commercial drive. So there's a popular anecdote which is shared about Kathiawadi people. Dhirubhai comes from Kathiawar. This is a place of have-nots. It's a barren land, but out of stone they somehow draw water. The people are so colorful because the landscape is so colorless. They fill their heads with color. Truly a representation of Dhirubhai Ambani's personality. Now, let's jump to 1942. He's 10 years old now. While other kids are out playing, Dhirubhai is selling bhajiyas, crispy fried snacks, to pilgrims at Mount Girnar, making a few rupees. Reminds me of Warren Buffett hawking gum door to door at age 6 or 7. I mean, Warren Buffett's grandfather had his grocery store, and Warren would go there. He would purchase Coca-Cola and chewing gum at wholesale price and then hawk it door to door at retail prices. And Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner in Berkshire Hathaway, was working around the same time in Warren Buffett's grandfather's grocery store. Ever had a hustle like that as a kid? Something tells me that Dhirubhai knew early on he wasn't waiting for life to hand him anything. By 1946, he's 14 at Bahadur Kanji High in Junagadh. It's free for Banyas, which helps because he is not rich. But here's the thing, he's not just studying. He's skipping class to organize protest against British rule, marching with the independence crowd. Teenage rebellion, sure, but with purpose. What do you reckon? Was he just restless or was something bigger driving him? I love that he's already thinking beyond his little world. It was during a movement to overthrow the Nawab's rule and secure Junagadh's accession to India during the partition in 1947 that Ambani, then a teenage high school student, got his first taste of political organization and his first brushes with authority. Remember that this is pre-independence India, and after that Dhirubhai builds his business empire in License Raj. So political organization and his brushes with authority are going to play so much important role afterwards. Now, 1951, this is where it gets real. His dad dies, money's gone, and at 16 he drops out. Following a long Banya tradition, he heads to Aden, Yemen, a buzzing British trade hub. Soon after finishing school in Junagadh, boys from Kathiawar often went to Arabian trading ports or East African market towns to gain experience and build capital. A network of personal contacts kept jobs within the community. Dhirubhai's elder brother Ramneek Lal, known as Ramneek Bhai, had gone to Aden 2 years earlier and worked in the car sales division of a French company, A. Bessie and Co. Imagine that. You're 16, family's broke. What would you do? He lands a gig as a gas station attendant at A. Bessie and Company, earning rupees 300 a month, about $60 back then. He had to give a test for getting a job there, to read from the Times of India, then write a summary in English, a test Dhirubhai passed satisfactorily. The company employed over 10,000 people, including around 3,000 Gujaratis hired as clerks, salesmen, and middle managers. This keeping jobs within the community is what actually helps him a lot in getting job over there. Dhirubhai's time in Eden acts as a very important chapter as all of this is still happening in his formative teenage years. So, Eden. Now, we'll talk a little bit about Eden because it's very important in Dhirubhai's entire business journey. Eden thrived during Roman times as a trading station between Egypt and India. The opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 further increased its significance. It became a key coaling port, which is refueling port for European shipping to Asia and Australasia. So, Aden is situated in Yemen, which is a Gulf country, and the Suez Canal opens in 1869. So, Suez Canal connects Europe and Asia, and so what's happening is lots of ships come here for refueling. The ships were ran on coal back then, so it is a key coaling port. Basically, business is bustling in its entirety in Eden. Eden's social scene, explained by a British historian, it says that middleman trade is flourishing here, and Eden is bustling with economic activity amidst stability provided by British rule. There existed a social structure there. So it's a hierarchical system of brokers from top foreign heads to low level workers and children offering labor. Then above them are the speculators, almost like traders, almost like commodity traders today, kind of. Speculators and price rings, which cause significant fluctuations in commodity and food prices. Dhirubhai himself speculates later on the price of polyester yarns. In the top of the hierarchy were the money lenders and dealers. They influenced these price changes and everyone else in the social system and benefited from their social leadership claims. An important story that I would share over here, that how this lesson helped Dhirubhai in his business journey, is when Dhirubhai comes back to Mumbai, he later befriends a person named T.A. Pai. His family ran Syndicate Bank and were the early institutional backers of Reliance, providing most of the 15 lakh rupees required, around 1.5 million rupees required when Dhirubhai started manufacturing. Dhirubhai made sure to take care of his friendship as T.A. Pai climbed the social ladder even further even further so as to reach the ministerial position. So what happens is, from Aden, Dhirubhai is getting this very important lesson that money lenders and dealers are the most important people in the social hierarchy. He befriends T.A. Pai, whose family ran Syndicate Bank, and what happens is Indira Gandhi, the then Prime Minister, nationalizes India's banks. So T.A. Pai, he is made the first chairman of Nationalized Life Insurance Corporation of India. He later joins the Congress party, becomes a member of Rajya Sabha, only to become Minister of Commerce, then Minister of Industries, managing the allocation of industrial licenses. He even held his ministerial positions during the emergency period. And Dhirubhai, across all of this time, has made sure to maintain his relationship with T.A. Pai. Definitely a lesson which helped him a lot. Now, even Dhirubhai's work in Aden is very significant. Dhirubhai was assigned to the Shell Products Division. It was the most rapidly growing division back then. Dhirubhai was sent to market Shell and Burma lubricants around the Bessie network, visiting traders in French Somaliland, Berbera, Eritrea, Ethiopia. So basically, it's that time in history when Africa is in European control, and Dhirubhai now is going to market these products to these countries, and this is not a luxurious experience. Some places were not accessible to steamers, so the Bessie salesman would travel by dhow. This is a traditional wooden sailing boat, a small wooden sailing boat. The accommodation was rough, and the food is generally not suitable for vegetarian Dhirubhai. In 1954, at age 22, he married Kokila Bain. His rock through all of this. His crashing on a mat in a shared flat, cooking with co-workers to save every rupee. Now, here I would like to share a contradiction to the movie Guru. So, there is a movie made by Bollywood loosely based on the life of Dhirubhai Ambani, where it is showed that Dhirubhai married Kokila Bain for the dowry that he would get from her family, although this is not true, because Kokila Bain's family was not particularly wealthy, so it was not a financially advantageous match for Dhirubhai. Although Kokila Bain, she was a solid home anchor, very much grounded in traditional values and religious piety. Although he was doing well, Dhirubhai was far from happy with his position as an employee. So there's a personal story, an anecdote recorded of a colleague. A colleague would later recall him as different from his workmates. I could see he wanted to make something of himself. He was never comfortable in service. He was a born businessman. And definitely he was a born businessman. I mean, we do remember he was selling bhajiyas as a child, and now even in Aden, he is doing business over here. A very important Dhirubhai folklore comes over here. So when Dhirubhai is in Aden, officials in Yemen's treasury noticed something odd. Their silver rial coins were vanishing. So rial is their currency, and their silver rial coins were vanishing from circulation. An investigation is launched and they trace it to Aden, where a young Indian clerk named Dhirubhai Ambani, barely in his 20s, had an open order in the souk for as many rials as he could get. He'd spotted that the rial's silver content was worth more than its exchange value against the British pound and other currencies. So he bought rials, melted them down, and sold these silver ingots to bullion dealers in London. So what's happening over here is, I will try to simplify it, to dumb it down. If the rial is worth 10 rupees, for example, but the rial is made out of silver, if you melt it, its silver content is worth 11 rupees. So there is definitely an arbitrage value over here, and Dhirubhai later would say about this, the margins was small, but it was money for jam. After 3 months, it was stopped, but I made a few lakhs of rupees. I don't believe in not taking opportunities. Another business that he used to do over there is this, that after office hours got over at 4:30, he would go to the Aden Souk, which is the bazaar or marketplace, to observe trading among various groups and learn from it. Then Dhirubhai would himself start trading commodities like rice and sugar, although there were company rules against it. So to get around the company rules, Dhirubhai referred to his activities as studying the market to avoid disapproval from his brother and employer. He initially makes profits, definitely, gaining business knowledge, but it was a very risky business. A major setback occurred when seawater damaged a sugar shipment, leading to financial distress. So he suffers a major loss around this time, and while waiting for an insurance claim, he sought loans from colleagues to recover. This is where another great story about Dhirubhai's character and lifelong commitment to those who help him comes around. So there's a relative by marriage and co-worker named Jamnadas Depala who lent him 5,000 shillings on this occasion. They go on to develop a close relationship, and he would often act as a big brother, a moral compass to Dhirubhai. So what happens is Dhirubhai's market studies gets exposed, and both Jamnadas Depala and Dhirubhai are suspended. However, Jamnadas takes all the blame on himself, sparing Dhirubhai, and leaves the company, then continues to invest in rice and sugar deals masterminded by Dhirubhai, but loses heavily to the point of losing most of his capital. He becomes very depressed around 1961. Around across all this, Dhirubhai continued to act as though he was in debt to Jamnadas. And so, when Jamnadas comes to India, Dhirubhai gave him a shop selling textiles for him, paid his salary, but Jamnadas stopped coming after some time. Dhirubhai still made sure to take care that his salary was paid in full till his death in 1987. Wow. I mean, he definitely did care for people who helped him. While during his time in Eden, he's also watching Shell pumps and BP build an oil refinery. Little seeds for later. 50 years on, he's running India's biggest refinery. Crazy how these dots connect, huh? Reminds me of Steve Jobs connecting the dots anecdote. So, Steve Jobs dropped out of his college officially, then dropped in unofficially on only classes he thought were interesting. One of the classes he drops in on is calligraphy class, having no idea of its utility or practical application later in his life. He just followed his curiosity. Over a decade later, that calligraphy class led him to developing the beautiful typography in the first Macintosh computer. In 2005, in his Stanford address, he said, "If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on this calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do." Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards. Dhirubhai left Eden in 1958 with his 7 years service and right of residency as a fallback. So what he's done is, if you do your job for 7 years in Eden, they would provide you right of residency. So Dhirubhai is using this as a fallback and trying his hand in business in India. His first child Mukesh Ambani is already born in 1957, and they are expecting their second child Dipti. By 1957, he saved 29,000 shillings, $3,000 or around 15,000 rupees. Dhirubhai is looking to go to Rajkot and into the dealership of automobile spare parts. But his childhood friend Krishnakant Vakharia, who was practicing law in Rajkot, had another friend in that same business who wasn't doing well, and he advised Dhirubhai to go to Bombay. Another important thing is the business partner he chose. So before going to Bombay, Dhirubhai heads to Chorwad, his village, to seek ideas and help from his relatives, and gets it from his second cousin Champaklal Damani and his family. So Champaklal had spent his time working in Aden for his family companies at about the same time that Dhirubhai was there. One business was Madhav Das Manikchand, which imported textiles and yarns from India, ran a transit business into Ethiopia, and held the agency for Bridgestone tires. The other was Enderji Manikchand and Company, which imported textiles from India and Japan. And when necessary, Dhirubhai had used the names of these firms during his own after hours trading during his business training. But Champak's Lal father closed shop in Aden and Ethiopia in 1957 at his retirement and decided to put rupees 1 lakh into a trading business for his son and Dhirubhai in Bombay. So this is the founding story of Reliance. This is the founding of Reliance in a tiny 350 square foot office in Masjid Bandar, Narsinathan Street. One table, three chairs, a phone, and two assistants. If the two partners and their initial two employees were all present, someone had to stand. At first, the business traded spices back to their contacts in the soak of Aden, betel nut, and curry ingredients, and shipped some cotton, nylon, and viscose textiles to Ethiopia, Somalia, and Kenya. But soon enough, since they were living in Bombay, local contacts in Bombay, most of them relatives from Gujarat, introduced them to the rising, frenetic, and potentially profitable business of trading synthetic yarns. And it's nearly all of it is controlled by Gujaratis. So, cotton and silk were the old stars of the textile world, very fast getting replaced by cheaper and more durable synthetic nylon, viscose, and polyester, which were hard wearing, quick drying, and crease proof, and could imitate the textures of both cotton and silk. But it's problematic from the get go. And it's not to find buyers, but to secure supplies. So, this is still license Raj in India, right? It's that time of history where India was a socialistic country and everything was within government and bureaucratic control. There is very limited production of these products in India, with just one viscose factory owned by the Birlas and just one government owned nylon plant and no polyester plant. Imports are also heavily regulated by import controls. There are only two ways you could get your hands on these materials. So, one leads you to illegal and grey areas full of smugglers. The other was via something called REPs, replenishment licenses. Now, not just anyone could get these licenses, they were given only to registered exporters of textiles, people or companies that made textiles and sold them to other countries. The deal was if you earned money by exporting textiles, the government would let you use a percentage of that money to import raw materials. These special import permissions were called replenishment licenses or REPs. Think of them as coupons that said you earned this much from selling stuff overseas. So now you can buy this much stuff from the other countries to keep your business going. Here's where Dhirubhai comes in with his cleverness. He sees opportunity. Even though the rules said that these REP licenses weren't supposed to be traded or sold to others, and only the person who got the license, the actual user, was allowed to use it to import materials, Dhirubhai realized that these licenses were super valuable. Why? Because not everyone who had a license needed all the materials they were allowed to import. And some people who did not have licenses desperately needed those materials to keep their business running. To Dhirubhai, these licenses were like cash. He could trade them or use them to make deals. So, what did he do? Dhirubhai started paying more than anyone else to get his hands on these REP licenses from the exporters who had them. He would offer them a little extra money, a higher margin, to convince them to work with him, even if it meant bending the rules a bit. Because he was willing to pay more, he quickly became the biggest player in this market for REP licenses. He collected so many of these licenses that he had a lot of control over who could get raw materials like yarn, the thread used to make fabric. Now, the actual trading of yarn itself didn't make him a ton of money because the profit margins were just so small. But that wasn't the real price. The real power came from his dominance over the licenses. Since he controlled so many REPs, he could practically decide how much yarn came into India and who got it. It was like he had a big switch. He could turn the supply of yarn on by letting it flow into the market or off by holding it back. Because of this REP game that Dhirubhai played, he got his first taste of big success in business. Fast forward to 1965, Reliance is bringing in around 5 million rupees in revenue with 5 lakh rupees in net profit. It's really big money. He's bringing in 50 lakh rupees of revenue with 5 lakh rupees in profit, but he's reinvesting 90% of profits back into the business. This is around the time when clashes started with his founder Champaklal Damani, and in 1965 they ended their partnership. It's believed that they had different temperaments. So, where Champaklal Damani was a cautious trader who didn't believe in building yarn inventories, Dhirubhai Ambani was a risk taker, a known risk taker who anticipated price rises to make profits, a trait that he learned in the souk of Aden. So the money later goes into trading in another firm, and Dhirubhai and his brothers bought his stake for 6 lakh rupees. This is where I would like to highlight how important your partner, your founder, your co-founder is in your startup journey. So this is an anecdote I'm sharing from Paul Graham's essay. Paul Graham says partner divorce is a major reason startups fail. In his essay, What Startups Are Really Like, he writes, you have to be careful who you pick as a co-founder, and that you have to work hard to maintain your relationship. What people wished they paid more attention to when choosing co-founders was character and commitment, not ability. You haven't seen someone's true colors unless you've worked with them on a startup. The reason character is so important is that it's tested more severely in a startup than in most other situations. One founder said explicitly that the relationship between founders was more important than ability. I would rather co-found a startup with a friend than a stranger with higher output. Startups are so hard and emotional that the bonds and emotional and social support that come with friendship outweigh the extra output lost, shares another founder in his essay. We learned this lesson a long time ago, says Paul Graham. If you look at the YC application, so Y Combinator, the largest startup incubator in the world, they have incubated several successful companies like Coinbase, Airbnb. So he's sharing that if you look at the YC application, there are more questions about the commitment and relationship of the founders than their ability. Founders of successful startups talked less about choosing co-founders and more about how hard they work to maintain the relationship. Brian Chesky, the co-founder of Airbnb, he once said that maintaining and preserving the relationship is always more important than winning the argument. One thing that surprised me is how the relationship of startup founders goes from a friendship to a marriage. My relationship with my co founder went from just being friends to seeing each other all the time, fretting over the finances and cleaning up shit. And the startup was our baby. I summed it up once like this: it's like we're married, but we're not fucking. Several people use that word married. It's a far more intense relationship than you usually see between co workers, partly because the stresses are so much greater, and partly because at first the founders are the whole company. So, this relationship has to be built of top quality materials and carefully maintained. It's the basis of everything. I mean, yes, definitely. Great relationship with your co-founders definitely helps. I mean, one of the most successful business relationship which comes to my mind is that of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. I mean, they together have built a $1 trillion behemoth. Another great modern example is that of Airbnb's Brian Chesky, Nathan, and Joe. I mean, these three guys together built $100 billion company in a decade. Now, coming back to Dhirubhai's story, this is around 1966. So he's going all alone as his co-founder has left him, and he senses a good opportunity in the textile business. So Dhirubhai, along with Amit Mehra, a Delhi-based chartered accountant and company secretary residing in Ashok Vihar, Delhi, started the first textile mill at Naroda in Ahmedabad in the year 1966. So Dhirubhai sets up a textile factory in 1966, and here textiles were manufactured using polyester fiber yarn. He started the brand Vimal, which was named after his elder brother Ramniklal Ambani's son Vimal Ambani. Extensive marketing of the brand Vimal in the interiors of India led to the establishment of the Reliance Textiles manufacturing unit, which was certified as excellent even by developed country standards. I mean, that was the commitment to quality that Dhirubhai had. So Dhirubhai in 1966 invested around 1 million rupees, 10 lakh, builds a synthetic textile mill in Naroda, Gujarat. And he did a lot of great stuff. I mean, vertical integration. He sourced yarn directly, bypassing middlemen. Then he got inventive and creative around saving cost. He imported second-hand German looms to cut costs, also navigating India's restrictive license Raj. Launched his own flagship fabric brand Vimal, which over time became synonymous with affordable luxury. How? Because of his marketing genius. Dhirubhai hired Bollywood stars for advertisements and taglines like Only Vimal. I mean, in 1966, he organized India's first textile fashion show at Mumbai's Regal Cinema, draping models in Vimal saris to woo retailers. He made his own retail channel, not relying on the traditional wholesalers. But not everything was uphill after starting the factory. The first 2 years, 1966 to 67, was a very hard time. The product had yet to be established, and the workers were working from morning to late evening. But Dhirubhai was very encouraging, and there was a family atmosphere. I mean, workers recall his hands on leadership. And Dhirubhai often used to say, if you sweat for Reliance, Reliance will sweat for you. There's this one story shared by Dhirubhai's employee Sushil Kothari. He said that at one point in 1967, it appeared that the mill would have to close because Reliance could not sell the cloth it was making. Dhirubhai told Kothari that if the factory had to be shut down, he should do it gradually and see that no blame is attached to his older brother Ramnik Bhai. But the Aden hands rallied after putting in a full shift at the factory in Naroda from 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. Ramnik Bhai and his managers would spend the afternoon and evenings touring markets around Ahmedabad, trying to persuade shopkeepers to stock Reliance fabrics. Dhirubhai worked everyone hard, often calling his managers at 6 a.m. from Bombay before they started out to work. They were expected to solve problems on their own initiative. Dhirubhai himself set the example. Suresh Kothari recalled one incident when spare parts were urgently needed for imported machines at Naroda. Dhirubhai had the parts flown in from Germany, then discovered that no trucks were available for the haul up to Ahmedabad. He bought two trucks, one to carry the parts and one as a backup, and sent up the consignment. The trucks were then sold in Ahmedabad. This reminds me of the hands on approach that Elon Musk took while amping up the production in Tesla factories. I mean, Elon literally slept in the factory floor because he believed that that would show his commitment to his employees and boost their morale. I mean, all of these businessmen and empire builders stories, these are the same personalities. I mean, all of these people are so alike. The result of what Dhirubhai and Ramneek Bhai did was steady growth in sales and profits for Reliance. In 1967, the first full year of production at Naroda, the company recorded sale of rupees 90 lakh or 9 million, yielding a net profit of rupees 13 lakh or 1.3 million. So he made 90 lakh in revenue with 13 million in profit. Dhirubhai and his family shareholders refused to take dividends and kept plowing earnings back into more machines. After a decade of manufacturing in 1977, that's the same year when Reliance filed for an IPO, Reliance had a turnover of 68 crores and profits of rupees 10.5 crores. That is literally an insane figure even by 1977 standards. So now we're coming here to 1977, and this is when Dhirubhai gets his big break. So what's happening over here is banks just won't lend him the kind of money he wanted, and so that becomes one of the big reason he has to take Reliance public. Over 58,000 investors, mostly small town folks, piled in. He issued 2.8 million shares at rupees 10 each, raising around 2.7 to 2.8 crores, and the demand was so wild it got oversubscribed 7 times. It may not sound like a lot because today we have IPOs getting subscribed 200, 300 times, but this is the time when the equity cult did not existed. But Dhirubhai, he gave birth to the equity cult, and his IPO got oversubscribed 7 times, and his shareholding, he just broadened it to meet listing requirements. Reliance was listed on the stock exchange in Bombay and Ahmedabad in January 1978. The money they raised is almost rupees 80 crores by 2025 standards. By 1978, in 1 year, the stock hit rupees 50 and Reliance raked rupees 70 crores in revenue. What was his mantra? Dhirubhai marketed shares like consumer goods. So he's not only a genius industrialist but also acted as a calculating financier, raising capital in the smartest ways possible. Because you must understand this, capital is tight and very expensive in our country. It was even more expensive back then. So to fund your ambitions, you must get smarter. Ambani treated stock marketing like a FMCG campaign, fast moving consumer goods. Reliance and his team, they organize road shows in vernacular languages. Teams travel to rural and semi-urban areas, conducting investor meetings in local languages, Gujarati, Marathi, Tamil. They emphasized Reliance's patriotic mission to build India's infrastructure, much like the Tata Group's positioning as a patriotic India first company, and that the mission is to develop India and that profit is just a byproduct. But a key difference was narrative control. Dhirubhai framed Reliance as a people's company, contrasting with elitist rivals like Tata and Birla. I mean, Tata and Birlas were the business royalties of India for a very, very long time. Then there were other psychological tactics which Dhirubhai used as well, like slogans, which goes like, own a piece of Reliance, own a piece of India's future. He also got the normal middle class people to buy his shares because of the dividend culture he perpetrated. I mean, Reliance paid consistent dividends even during lean periods, creating trust. Small investors saw it as a monthly income source. Dividends were typically declared as a percentage of the face value. For example, in 1980s, dividends reportedly started around 12 to 15% in the early 1980s. By mid 1980s, dividends had increased to around 22%. Then, where Dhirubhai also excelled was in the distribution of these shares. Now, we need to remember that unlike today, where we can just buy and sell shares at the whims of pressing a button, this was a different time. Shares were actual physical paper things, and you could not just buy or sell them anywhere. So Dhirubhai and his team, they started to sell their shares by creating a new distribution via post offices, banks, and even grocery stores in partnership with local brokers. The more I think about Dhirubhai Ambani, the more it gets me thinking. I mean, this man was not just an industrialist, he was a financier, a genius financier. He would often say, for us, the customer is a king, but the shareholder is God. And I totally understand what he meant by shareholder is God. He maintained strong relationships with politicians, bureaucrats, but most importantly, retail investors, which helped him navigate complex regulatory environments. He basically turned Reliance into a political powerhouse back in the day. Pretty wild stuff. By the mid 80s, Reliance had this massive army of over 3 million shareholders. We're not talking big shot tycoons here. Most of them were just regular folks like middle class families, government workers, even farmers. It was like the ultimate grassroots squad. Whenever they faced a takedown by the government, they did flex their muscle. I mean, take the 1986 Fairfax scandal. Reliance got hit with accusations of smuggling and messing with foreign exchange. Things could have gotten ugly, but those shareholders, they weren't having it. They hit the streets with rallies and flooded politicians with letters, spinning the whole thing as some kind of attack on the little guy, the common investor. It worked like a charm. Even the Rajiv Gandhi government, which was in power at the time, had to back off a bit because they didn't want to deal with the blowback from all those fired up investors. Then there's this other crazy moment in 1985 when the government tried to put a lid on equity dilution through convertible debentures, basically a way companies raise cash. And Reliance had raised a lot of cash using convertible debentures. Reliance shareholders weren't about to let that slide either. They pushed back hard, lobbying like pros, and guess what? The government ended up loosening the rules. It's like Ambani turned his investor base into this unstoppable shield. Anytime trouble came knocking, they'd just rally up and make life tough for anyone trying to mess with Reliance. Pretty genius, right? Ambani's strategy wasn't just financial innovation, it was socio political engineering. By turning shareholders into a loyal community, he insulated Reliance from regulatory attacks and built a capitalist empire in a socialist economy. As he famously said, पैसा बहुत कमाना चाहिए और लोगों को भी कमाने देना चाहिए. You should earn a lot of money, but you should let others earn too. It wasn't just about tech breakthroughs, it was more about killer execution and political savvy. So, what's Ambani's secret sauce? managing the environment, which essentially meant keeping politicians and bureaucrats happy. He would bow down to anyone, ministers, peons, you name it, if it meant getting approvals. Pride, not an issue when business was on the line. Then he had to navigate the license Raj. He leveraged political connections to secure permits, famously stating, "You need licenses to do business, then make friends with those who grant them." Tim Cook's, the CEO of Apple, his modern mastery in getting around the political regulations of today comes to my mind. Now, I mean, if you look at Tim Cook, he's taken Apple from basically a $350 billion company in August 2011 to almost a $4 trillion company now. That's a jump of over 10 times its value, or roughly a 958% increase in market cap under Cook's watch as CEO. All of this happened when Apple faced 8 years of trade war. But Tim started in Apple on March 18, 1998 as Senior Vice President of Worldwide Operations, lured away from Compaq by Steve Jobs himself. Apple was only a $5.4 billion company back then, a 68,000% increase in market cap. Back at Compaq, Tim saw how they outsourced to Foxconn. When he joined Apple, he got Foxconn on board too. He even convinced them to assemble the original iPhone at a loss, promising juicier deals later. Tim Cook and Foxconn's charismatic CEO Terry sweet talked China into building iPhone City, a special zone treated like foreign soil with unique import-export rules just for Apple's top-notch factories. Then there's the $500 billion pledge in 2025 during Trump's second term. Apple promised new facilities, jobs, and AI server factories like one in Houston over 4 years. It screamed America first for Trump's agenda, but dig deeper and it's mostly smoke and mirrors. A slick move. Trump gets his headline, Apple dodges real pressure, and nothing much changes. Ambani and Cook aren't alone. Take Brad Jacobs. He founded 8 companies. 6 of them are public. QXO, XPO, GXO, RXO, United Rentals, and United Waste System. QXO's targeting the $800 billion building products distribution industry. United Rental rents heavy equipment. XPO handles logistics. GXO does warehousing, and RXO is a truck brokerage. No fancy technology first, just a founder nailing execution and service, building a $12 billion net worth. The common thread is they're not just business geniuses. They're masters at working the system. I mean, look at Ambani, Cook, and Jacobs. Ambani leveraged political games and media to build Reliance. Tim Cook uses supply chain smarts and political finesse to keep Apple on top at the time when both Chinese and American governments are at each other's back. It's about execution, connections, and knowing who to charm or outmaneuver to win. So what's the takeaway here? I think it's grit, turning a rough start into a rocket fuel. Vision, seeing past a yarn stall to a global empire. And execution, building it mess and all. For you and me, it's about betting on ourselves and playing the long game. When Dhirubhai died in 2002 at the age of 69, Reliance's turnover was rupees 75,000 crore, up from 70 crores in 76, rupees 3,000 crore in 91, and rupees 60,000 crore in 2000. Reliance's assets, it went from rupees 33 crores to 30,000 crores in 25 years. So this was Reliance and Dhirubhai Ambani's story from before he was born to Reliance's IPO in 1977. In episode number 2, we will discuss in more detail about Reliance Textiles Limited, the actual company which went into IPO, and everything from Reliance and Dhirubhai Ambani's journey from 1977 to 2002 when Dhirubhai Ambani left the world. How astonishing it is, though, right? That how in just one lifetime, the son of a school teacher born in an insignificant village built India's largest company. Dhirubhai always used to say that our dreams have to be bigger, our ambitions higher, our commitment deeper, and our efforts greater. This is my dream for Reliance and for India, and he indeed succeeded in achieving his dreams. Thank you for hanging out with me. I can't wait to dive into the next episode with you. Catch you soon. Keep chasing those big dreams. See you in episode 2.